Mic. Camera. Action.
The Rocky Mountains. Clean spring water, right? Right. Come on. I've been done with this duck plant.
I'm going to have to go ride in the back with Vera for a while. She's lonesome.
Hey, we got Jack and Tip in the cab on the road. You and me, Pond?
Tip, do you ever sleep?
Oh, yeah. I slept last week.
All right. Welcome back to Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue from past debut through to present day in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from their focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. Today's guest is the 20th century geek, Scott Weatherly. Today's film is Howard Franklin's Larger Than Life from 1996. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. Scott, good evening, sir.
How you doing? You okay?
I'm good, thank you. I guess I should really start this off much like I did for Dave when we covered My Boyfriend's Back, and just thanking you for your commitment to my cause.
Yeah, well, I've got a copy here.
Yeah.
I've invested in Larger Than Life. I just want to say straight away, 1996. I am now the tail end. You've done Lone Star,
yeah, and
you did Time to Kill, and now we're doing Larger Than Life. I just want to say you had a film about a mystery and family trauma and how things get passed down from generations. A real sort of small town, but family drama, and then a court drama dealing with race and again sort of like what would a parent do? Some real weighty themes. I get an elephant movie. I got the real pick of the bunch is what I got from 1996.
Yeah, I feel bad because I reached out to you and was like, I really want you to come on this episode because it's Bill Murray. So I thought, who better? The guy who won the Comics on Trial on Ghostbusters, the staunch defender of Bill Murray. I thought you were the guy to come on. But when I watched the trailer, I thought, oh no.
Yeah.
What have I let this guy in for? McConaughey doesn't even appear in the trailer.
No, it's a. I've got to say, just the framing of this film. All right, everything about this film is inconsistent. There isn't a single consistent thing about this film. Right? You get the DVD. I was going to try to. I know different film, but like you get the DVD. It's a big elephant, and Bill Murray sat on a suitcase, and the larger than life writing is designed to look like an elephant. Right? It looks like a daft family comedy. It's a PG. It's a sort of. It looks like a family feel good kind of comedy. You go, okay. And then you watch it, and the first half with Bill Murray, it's not serious. It's still a comedy, but it's a very much almost like Bill Murray is weirdly miscast in this for most of it. And I'm not sure what this is. I think I guarantee that this was offered to Jim Carrey at some point, or like a whole host of 90s people. And then Matthew McConaughey turns up at one point towards the end, and he's in a completely different film as Tip Tucker. And I love what he does, but I'm like, and by the end of it, it's like there's a heartfelt thing about Bill Murray at one point says like. I wasn't a great person, and just knowing this elephant's made me a better person. And I'm going like, I think this is the third film in his douche to good guy trilogy. But I was like, but you weren't that bad at the beginning. Like you weren't awful. It's like the whole family thing is weirdly inconsistent. Like with his dad being a clown, but his mum lied. We'll get into it, but we watched it. The whole family watched this film last night.
I did do. Okay.
Yeah, we watched it. And
please pass on my apologies afterwards.
Well, no, Ellie quite liked it because it had animals and stuff in it. She was like, she thought the elephant was funny. But at the end of it, like Alex did turn to me and she was like, I'm glad that was only an hour and a half.
Fair. Totally fair.
Like, yeah. So, yeah, it's a real oddity, this film. I don't know who it's for.
No, you've hit a lot of my talking points there, and we'll come back to them throughout the podcast. But it was almost like you could see my notes when you were. And one of those key things was like, who is this aimed at? Because the comedy, and I think we can both say that with very clear quote marks around the word, is quite kiddish, isn't it? Not just the slapsticky physical stuff, but like even the kind of sight humor. Like for instance, the first one that comes to mind is when he's first got the elephant and he's like, come on, we're going this way. And he walks off camera to the right and the elephant walks off to the left. And you're like, okay, that's kind of traditional sight humor. That's all right. Works really well in a Wallace and Gromit kind of thing. Yeah. But then, as you said, like the overarching story and the dialogue feels like it's pitched and skewed quite adult. And I know the whole 4 quadrants argument and this is a family movie and you need a bit for everybody. But yeah, there's no balance to the two sides at all. No.
Bill Murray has got, and I don't know whether I'm a Bill Murray fan, and this you said I like Ghostbusters. Right? I like Groundhog Day, and I like the film Quick Change, which is one of those other sort of like small.
Same director, right?
It is, yeah. And I really like that film.
Change, yeah.
That's that's why the only reason I was like, oh, maybe this is something different is because Quick Change is much darker. It's about Bill Murray he gets weirdly dressed up as a clown, and he robs a bank, and then it's about the getaway and how it sort of keeps going wrong. And also,
it feels like it's kind of like a Dog Day Afternoon meets Falling Down, but with Bill Murray as a clown, kind of.
Yeah, but it's got Gina Davis in, and one of the I forget who else is in it, but there's the one who went nutty that was in Independence Day.
Okay, yeah. Randy Quaid,
thank you.
Yeah.
And so, but the film's a comedy, but it's kind of like he's just his anger, his grumpiness is throughout. Like he is consistently that grumpy Bill Murray. But then when you look at the rest of his career, like through the 90s, like it's all over the place. Like he was begging to meet Wes Anderson. That's kind of what was happening. And I think he's one of those actors that if I've read repeatedly, like when he made like not the first Ghostbusters, he was all in and it was fine, and he was and he turned up. For the second Ghostbusters, he signed on, and like for example, like he doesn't have an agent; he has a phone number.
That's right. Yeah.
And
you have to leave a message, and he'll decide if he gets back to you. Yeah.
So like for Ghostbusters 2, like they didn't even know on day one of shooting if he was actually going to turn up, and things like that. And he made like other films sort of like at a whim. He made like a drama film. He made Where the Buffalo Roam, which is sort of a gonzo sort of journalistic thing. What's it, Las Vegas?
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So he's done like all these sporadic films and weird films, but he never kind of like fits into anything. You can't go, oh, that's a that's a Bill Murray movie. That's the kind of thing he's going to do. He is massively inconsistent. Until he meets Wes Anderson, and now he's just like, oh, no, I'm just going to do these films for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Whoever sold him on this film, well done.
Yeah. Assumedly, it was his past relationship with the writer and director. I guess.
I'm assuming it must be, and they were like, "There's going to be an elephant in it." Like,
yeah. But he does. I mean, you were saying that you don't know if he's going to turn up. I'm not sure he does really turn up for this movie. He's on screen, but there's not a lot of life to it, ironically, considering the title. And it's just it couldn't be any more stereotypical. Could it? Those first couple of scenes when you meet him and he's like the motivational speaker, like if you had to invent a Bill Murray type character for another movie, it'd be exactly this, and it's that kind of cantankerous and fast talking and quick thinker, but just like kind of grumpy and moody. Like it's such a classic Bill Murray character, isn't it? And I think he's introduced that way as you said, in order for us to have some sort of arc.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. What arc? By the end, he has this big, as you said, like epiphany, and this moment on the tarmac with Janine Garofalo's character, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I don't feel like we've got anywhere. We've gone through this series of skits that are desperately searching for some sort of way to connect them together to become a movie, but you don't see any growth from him throughout them, really.
No, and I think the thing is, like you say, he clearly turned up and was just sort of like, "Oh, that's the lines for today."
Yeah.
I'll do the physical comedy, and then I'll move on. So, next scene. Thank you very much. Like it does. Yeah. It just feels like
first takes, maybe. Yeah,
in some cases. Yeah, in some cases, definitely. I can imagine, especially in some of the wet scenes where he's getting rained on. Like, when he wakes up in the rain, I'll guarantee you, he's like, I'm doing that once.
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah, I don't know. And it made me think, like, after I'd watched this. Because there are other films like this, that you have this kind of, buddy setup of a person and a thing, that allows them to see things in a different perspective, like
Turner and Hooch,
Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like, you get that, the straight man, and then you get the thing, like the dog or the cartoon rabbit, or there's other things as well. But Turner and Hooch is a good example, actually, like where, you get the frustration like throughout. There is the sort of like, they get really annoyed with the animal.
Yeah.
And eventually the sort of like that turns to an affection and then, into a sort of, they end up protecting it, or there is something that connects them then, like, in whether the animal saves them or, leads them to the love of their life or whatever. Like there'll be that kind of thing. Yeah, in this, at one point, he actually says, like, she saved my life. And I'm like flicking back through the film in my head going like,
yeah.
Did he? What? Oh, shit, did I miss a scene? Like, did I fall asleep? And I'm going like, well, not really. Like, she saves the village bit is kind of cool.
And
later
in
on.
New Mexico, yeah.
In New Mexico. Like, that was kind of cool. But, like, I'm like, I don't remember him, like, being saved in any particular way. If he means it like metaphorically, like, I was on this terrible trajectory and she saved my life. And I was like, but you weren't. You were a kind of like mediocre motivational speaker. Like, I don't know what the arc is for this film. It's kind of bizarre.
And I think it's almost as mixed as the messaging, really. I mean, we've got a movie ultimately at the end which kind of says, animals in showbiz is bad. In a movie about an animal in showbiz, like,
yeah, it's funny because Julie and I have sort of talked about this recently. Actually, with RoboCop, we were talking about sort of other films like that. And one of the things we got to is like violence in films that then get satirized. Like things, even like The Hunger Games, or films that be like, it's deplorable to to enjoy watching violence. But we're going to make you realize that by watching spectacular violence, and you go, you're kind of part of the problem. Like but you can't help, showing the problem without becoming part of the problem, and that's exactly this. So you go, this is a trained elephant. Like she doesn't really get to go to Sri Lanka at the end of this film. She's going back to a pen somewhere, to appear in either a circus or another film. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd film throughout. And I did think, like, what was coming out at the time, and you mentioned like Turner Hooch. That's kind of like late 80s. And I thought, who wrote this and who was? I haven't done any research, but I'm thinking, like, Disney was trying to hit things with like Flubber and like trying to and there's all these kinds of like family friendly kind of kiddie. Well, not even kiddie films, family-friendly films. The idea is get the family together and
Nutty Professor. That must be
Nutty Professor.
Well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly, perfect time. Like, Eddie Murphy did Nutty Professor. Jim Carrey doing like Ace Ventura and like like The Mask, and so this is like this is peak early Jim Carrey. And I was thinking, who is he competing with right now? Who's Bill Murray trying to get in on? And I think that was my thing. He's trying to do a family film for whatever purpose, paycheck most likely. But this seems to be trying to hit that line, and I can fully imagine in this going around and being handed to, like, you know, handed to like Jim Carrey and Robin Williams and like a bunch of other people, and them saying like, "Oh, do you want to do this film?" And they're going like, "No, this is this is really rubbish. I don't want to do this film." And yeah, so Bill Murray decided to do it, which is weird.
You used the word time, and I think that's another thing that really stood out to me. And that, 96, it doesn't feel like it fits there at all. Like when Bill Murray pulls out a mobile phone, I was like, what? Because I thought everything about it said 80s up until that point. Even like the costume and the kind of the motivational speaking scene, and that had a couple of decent gags in it, to be fair. But and that's the best performance from Bill Murray. Day one, maybe, when he had a bit of energy and life. But yeah,
it's a crowd though. It's a crowd.
Yeah,
that's where he's doing that. Yeah. He's a performer and he's in front of a crowd. He's loving doing that scene.
Yeah. It didn't feel like a 90s movie. It felt like something that was. That's why, like Turner and Hooch, and you said Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They're good reference points because they're 80s movies. It felt like that. And the only other person that we haven't mentioned that jumped into my mind was Adam Sandler.
Yes. Yeah,
particularly because of the performance of McConaughey. That felt very much like a over-the-top supporting Rob Schneider style character from an Adam Sandler comedy.
His performance, I mean, there's no getting away from this because the film, like you said, there's not. When you had like Lone Star and Time to Kill, and you're like, let's get into like racial themes and this idea of fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. None of that's in this film, by the way. No. Like the whole, what's really kind of frustrating is this film is about Bill Murray's character. His father, that he has been told died 40 years ago, has died, and he has this large inheritance, and so he needs to go and sort of accept this large inheritance, and he has it, but like there's no kind of arc or like grief. There's like a 10-second bit with his mum where he sort of has a joke and he's sort of like, I had this for me, mum. Yeah, I had a dad for 40 years and now I don't, kind of thing. But there's no sort of like anger about it or frustration. He just sort of disappears. He goes off, and then like there's no like looking back. He never calls. He never sort of. There's no kind of like dealing with grief to say like like, oh, what could have been, or even when he meets another the human blockhead, played by Commissioner Gordon. Like there's no like who knew his father. There's there isn't a great deal of it. There are little bits where they look through a photo album and stuff, but there's no kind of like, oh, it was a better time. He was a great man, and like he lived a freewheeling life. This is the carny life. This is why your mother couldn't stick it. Like don't be, because at one point he even says like the blockhead says there are two types of people. There's a carny or there's a rube. Don't live the rube life. But there's no sort of going, well, is that what I've had? Is that what I was given by my mum? Like, there's no kind of like deconstruction or assessment or analysis of any of this. It just kind of just happens, and then you just like, right, okay, well, next scene. Like it's very much that. It just wants to get to the next scene to try and do something else silly and funny. Yeah, I agree. And unfortunately, most of it is not funny. Maybe it's a little bit silly, I suppose, but. Yeah, it all just feels terribly. Actually, do you know what I mean? If they'd sort of realised on day one this isn't working, it probably would have taken very little adjustment to turn this into quite a serious family drama, and still didn't have to be any more didn't have to be any more mature in terms of age rating, but could have just been a bit more mature in terms of what it was trying to say. I know I do this a lot. Okay, that's what I always do. I'm going to tell you like this is what they should have done. Scott's rewrite section. Yeah. You're right. You are right, though. But all this needs is for the. It's a bit like when you watch a comedy, like a comedy horror, and there's a I forget who says it, but the way the comedy works is if the horror's taken seriously. So you need to be like, oh, the werewolf, the vampire, the monster, whatever the horror is based on has to be kind of relatively serious. Yeah, it has to be scary. Yeah, it has to. Yeah, you have to have the scares so the comedy works and stuff, right? If this is going to be a sort of a comedy drama, which is where I think you could go, and you could do Heart. the whole sort of having been lied to, having missed out on his father, learning about this sort of carnival clown heritage that he has, should all be sort of taken seriously. Like it should be like there should be like a grief thing of him opening that chest and sort of seeing all this sort of history and these things and, going like, what have I missed out on? But then
not just honk, red nose, throw it away.
Yeah. But like should be, he should actually open that and find that there was a picture of him as a boy in there or something else. Like there should be this sort of, oh, my dad didn't just like, I was taken away from him. He wasn't like this Slam wasn't a deadbeat dad. Like the kid was left and the mum left and didn't tell him anything. Like, there should be some hint of like the dad's grief.
No, what happened. That. Yeah.
And so he should, then they can deal with that anger. So if anything, like he's a schmuck, and then really they should bring him down to basically sort of like, deconstruct him. And then the journey, the difficulty of the journey with the elephant, with Vera, should be what brings him back up, because then he starts to see that despite all this, actually, there are, here's the good things in life and how he can be a better person. And, this combination of his life and his dad's life together, he's able to save the village and in this rainstorm, and, he can make the choices where money doesn't matter, but the elephant's life does, and that sort of thing. Like it should mean something. Yeah,
I agree. It's only a year later that I was just checking. I couldn't remember the name of the film. Like As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson, and then about Schmidt a couple of years after that, they're towing that line of like
exactly that. Yeah,
being serious, talking about issues, but making you laugh along the way. So you're right. That absolutely is the scope to do it with the kind of actor that is able to pull off both those facets, and Bill Murray should fall into that category, really.
No, I think Bill Murray's massively miscasted. He can in later life. I think Wes Anderson has given him that remit.
Maybe that's fair. Yeah,
I like him in sort of like The Life Aquatic and those kinds of films. I've seen a couple of them, and I think he's very good. And I clearly see that like Murray has gone, oh, this is my director. Like I can do the weird, but I can do the sort of serious. Bill Murray's not a good dramatic actor, and I'll happily say that. If this had been like, if they'd had a dramatic actor playing this role that could have done the grief, you could have then had the comedy around them. You need the straight man for the comedy to sort of come to life. I'm not saying like Clint Eastwood kind of straight man. Tom Hanks would have been genius in this film. Tom Hanks would have been, as you said, I love Turner and Hooch. I think that film was amazing. But yeah, I think Tom Hanks or someone like that could have done this film. Or even Robin Williams would have been great in this film. But you need that kind of seriousness to sort of play off. And then someone needs to take Matthew McConaughey aside and say, let's turn it down a notch or two. Yeah. So should we talk Tip Tucker?
Let's do it. Yeah. So I noticed he was third billing on the opening credits, which I thought was quite interesting.
That's quite good. Yeah.
It feels about right for the level that he's in the movie, I think. And then it's 52 minutes in, I clocked that he came in.
Yeah.
So by this point, Jack Corcoran, Bill Murray's character, has already been through a series of kind of misadventures, hasn't he? In a junkyard, and he hires a truck, doesn't he? Which that's probably, for me, the highlight of the movie in terms of Bill Murray's comedic skits when he's in the truck and it tips forward, doesn't it? And you get some really...
That actually did make me laugh. The whole truck scene was good. Good physical comedy at that point. That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never seen that front cab of a truck do that, going up at this kind of like 90-degree angle. So all of that kind of works, and you get some really in-your-face candy product placement, don't you? Here's a Snickers bar. Here's some M&Ms.
I saw you even open. Oh, there's a Twix there. Yeah.
And then so he's looking for a new ride, isn't he? He's looking for somebody else to pick him up, and enter Matthew McConaughey as this trucker Tip Tucker. It is. It's a performance. Yeah, like I said, it feels like a kind of Rob Schneider could have done this, or you're right, this Jim Carrey level. It made me think of Tropic Thunder, a film I'm going to cover.
Yes,
in a few months
down the line. Yeah,
because he is going full, and I won't say the word because I know we're not supposed to anymore. It's an offensive word for a lot of people, but he's gone full simple Jack is how I will phrase it here in this movie. Yeah, there's no leash, there is no, and it's Vilma from Texas Chainsaw. Actually, it's his bad guy. I can't remember the name anymore from Scorpion Spring. That film's just left now. I don't need it anymore. It's gone.
Useless knowledge. Pass it away.
Yeah, it's uncontrolled. Maybe is a word I would use. What did you think?
Well, there's two sort of parts of this character of Tip Tucker. Firstly, like he doesn't exist in this universe of the film.
Sure, agreed.
Because there's his introduction is at a trucker diner.
Yeah.
And you've got Murray sort of sat there, and he's been sort of I think the elephant's outside, or actually they're looking for a new ride.
Yeah, he's put all the sweets into a tub, hasn't he? Outside,
yes,
in the sweets. Yeah.
And all these truckers are like truckers. All right, they're all like big beardy guys or whatever, and they're all sort of sat there. And then you have like Tip Tucker, and it's kind of like a ball of energy. And he's leaning over the counter and he's talking a million miles out, and they're all laughing at him. Like they clearly know who he is as a character. But like that first bit, I'm like, okay, fine, I get it. Like he's the weirdo. He's the kind of person that probably wears a tinfoil hat. Like he believes the government's in my brain.
Oh yeah, proper QAnon style conspiracy theorist, isn't he? Yeah.
Because he's talking about the food, does he? Don't eat the food, And like I think someone's eating a bit of cake or some pie or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like a blueberry pie. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, you think there's a blueberries, and all that. That opening scene I thought is actually funny and good. I was like, oh, okay, I get this. It's the physical element that kind of threw me, because then he takes this into sort of like a physical performance where, like, it's all like nervous energy and all that stuff, which is fine. But he's like hunched over, and he kind of does this thing like he never steps up or down. Like steps, he jumps constantly. Like he jumps out of his truck, he jumps up into the truck and all this stuff. And I was just like, it feels too much.
Yeah.
Like you can either be all the ball of energy and the fast talk, or you can do the other. You need to try and, bring them both into the middle a little bit. So it kind of felt too cartoony for the rest. That the film I'd watched up until this point, I'm like, cool, okay, I get this. And then this character enters, and you're like, I'm kind of lost. I don't know. Like, yeah,
there's a scene with him after he's realised that he's been tricked into taking Bill Murray and the elephant. He fakes a phone call, doesn't he, to cancel his current like hauling
bowling
gig.
Pins.
Yeah, and he's in the police car with a sheriff or a deputy, like hunting them down. And that actor almost kind of looks. She almost sort of sits there looking like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I don't know how to be in this scene. Like it's coming out of the actor, let alone the character that's in the car with him. I agree with you. Yeah, the way he holds his body, it made me think of the old Action Man figures.
Yeah,
like the taller ones, because you could sort of move their arms a little bit up and down and their legs a little bit backwards and forwards, but they were in a fixed position. And that's what he sort of seems to do all through the movie. It's really weird. Like it's almost
very
like
angular.
Like his arms and legs are in casts.
Yes,
but he's able to move. It's very interesting. Yeah.
So it is a performance, as you say, and he makes a choice that
he does that. Yeah.
This is what I'm going to go for. But again, I think having seen, I haven't seen Texas Chainsaw in years. Like I listened to the podcast and stuff, but I hadn't watched it for years. It reminded us, and so you're right, it's kind of tapping into that. And we sort of said off air, but I think it'd be interesting when this was filmed in relation to the other things that he's doing, because according to IMDb, I think this was released after A Time to Kill.
Yeah.
So the stuff he'd been doing, he'd been sort of moving towards something else. I mean, like you say, watching Lone Star and that sort of laconic kind of the sheriff character that, he played in that as Buddy Deeds, and you're kind of like, okay, well, he's kind of like, I can imagine him being that kind of slow drawl kind of stoic kind of sheriff. And then he's the sort of charming Southern gentleman of Time to Kill and all this other stuff, the Southern lawyer. And you go, okay, right, that's what he's heading for, right? He's almost like he's picked a course, and I always think when I watch sort of young actors and films, like, who are you competing with? Like, who are you taking roles from? And you hear them give these stories, don't they? They're like, I got this role, but it almost went to, Harrison Ford, got Indiana Jones because Burt Reynolds, Tom Selleck couldn't do it at the time, and you hear all those kinds of stories. So I often look at like actors in that when they're up and coming, I'm like, okay, well, who are you looking to dethrone? Like, who are you sort of taking on? And so when you watch those two films, I'm like, oh, you're competing with like Brad Pitt and those sort of like even like Keanu Reeves. Like, you're looking to come up into that space and be that. And then you watch this, and I'm going like, oh, fuck knows. Like, like, have you watched Ace Ventura and now you're trying to get into the Jim Carrey space? Like, what were you thinking? And so I know you've gone through all these films, for good and ill, really. Do you feel that he ever had like a career trajectory? Was anything ever sort of like, this is where I'm heading for him? Or is it kind of like job to job, or even up until like this point?
Certainly at this point, it's job to job, I think. Yeah. I mean, I think he had, from what I can tell, he had the kind of impression of where he wanted to go. And you're absolutely right. That kind of Lone Star of Time to Kill is where he wanted to get to. And he's hitting that point now. So I think that this has to have been filmed before. It has to have been. It must have been one of those things where there wasn't much going on, and he took a role, much like kind of Scorpion Spring was and Texas Chainsaw was. And as you said, it's kind of, oh, this is on the table at the moment. Do you want to do it? Oh, yeah, okay. To keep paying the rent.
It's third billing as well, so it's it must have been quite a reasonable check for, and a Bill Murray film. So
yeah, I mean, surprising nobody. There is no mention of this in Greenlight, so I won't be sharing any of that for this episode.
You see, that surprises me. That does surprise me. It does, only because of when it is released. Like, at least there should have been some comment of him going like, I had this great success. I was doing these great films. I also acted like a complete monkey in this other film with an elephant. Like,
well, that's interesting. That's helping me kind of timeline wise, I think, because the biography literally jumps from kind of Texas Chainsaw. There's that tiny little mention of Lone Star to A Time to Kill. So I think probably there's this little pocket where he's taking paychecks. Yeah. So after Time to Kill, he goes off the radar for a little while. Like the kind of instant hit of fame, he kind of takes 3 to 6 months off, and he goes to a monastery, and he goes down the Amazon River, and he kind of goes back into nature as he does frequently. And then comes back.
It's very McConaughey, that isn't it? Really, that's
absolutely.
So
yeah. So he went to a monastery, and they kind of advised him to find his spiritual self. So his spiritual self was, I think it was 22 days or something, like a month down the Amazon River, and then he came back and got contact. So it works out all right.
Thank God he didn't come back and was like, "You now need to start calling me Tip Tucker."
This must have come before A Time to Kill, and it's just perhaps it was sitting on a shelf and nobody wanted it, and then because he hit big. Quick, get it out. Maybe they even moved him up the billing in order to
it wouldn't surprise me.
A selling point.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. We've all seen that with actors' films. You said it about Texas Chainsaw, like re-released in the early 2000s again when they're like starring Matthew McConaughey, Reese Witherspoon, Renee Zellweger.
Yeah,
and you're like,
I get those two mixed up all the time.
Yeah, and then you sort of watch it and you're going like, oh no, oh no. It's an odd one, but it is interesting.
Well, because he's amongst quite a few people as well, isn't he? You mentioned Commissioner Gordon, but I mean, there's quite a few names in this. I mean, Keith David crops up.
Keith David, I love the fact that I love Keith David. So the fact he sort of pops up as well, I'm just like, oh man, yeah, this is awesome. Like so many like weird little. Like
Linda Fiorentino's in it, Jeremy Piven. We mentioned Janine Garofalo. It's Pat Hengel, isn't it? Is the name?
Pat Hengel, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Lois Smith in one scene. So there's quite a considerable number of people who are willing to turn up for this, even just in very small roles. So there must have been some. I mean, Linda Fiorentino and Janine Garofalo, they're kind of coming into their careers themselves at this point, aren't they? Mid-90s.
Yeah.
Very much playing their stereotypical roles. I mean, you could have taken Gruffalo out of this and straight into The Truth About Cats and Dogs, and Fiorentino out of this and straight into any of those kind of dangerously sexy, noirish femme fatale characters.
I know Linda Fiorentino. The only thing I really know from is Dogma. That's
oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
But Janine Gruffalo know from Mystery Men and like other things as well. So yeah, it is like the fact that Jeremy Piven's in it for like 5 minutes. I'm
playing Jeremy Piven again.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, you talk about range. Yeah, he's not got it, has he? Really, you're never going to do that. You're never going to do the Jeremy Piven filmography. But one of the things that is like you say, surrounded by these actors that pop up, and again, it feels like if you had someone other than Murray doing this, so let's say this was a Tom Hanks vehicle. Which I can't help but go back to because it feels like this would have been a late 80s, early 90s kind of Tom Hanks kind of vehicle. That I think you would have had, names pop up almost as like proper cameos in those kinds of roles, or something like, because it feels like the kind of film that would do that. But one of the things that this tells me about McConaughey, because in the last episode you talked about like actors that just turned up and were like, bang, you're a star. Like they have a little bit of a tail, with like films and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, boof, that's it. And you mentioned like Tom Cruise as being, I think, the prime example of that. But what Tom Cruise did, Tom Cruise became Tom Cruise and then stuck being Tom Cruise for the next 30 years. He sort of became Maverick and never stopped being. I don't care what anyone says. Like, again, I like Tom Cruise films. I like the Mission Impossible films. But he's never not Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is a movie star.
Yeah.
Right? Tom Cruise sells movies because he's a movie star. Regardless of whatever you think about his life or career and stuff. But what I find with McConaughey is almost like, I would say he's like a character actor that made it big.
Yeah.
And you don't get many of those. Like most big stars, even like say I like Tom Hanks or like, Tom Hanks is adjustable within a range, but he's still got a fixed range.
Yeah, agreed.
Robin Williams, I'd say, was a character actor, being a comedian. He could really do the very dark and serious all the way through to the insanely sort of thing. And I think like you can see that doing this, that with a bit of sort of like tweaking, like Matthew McConaughey's got that range. Like he can do the insanely wacky and pull it off, and he can do the weighty sort of serious stuff. And he can, you wouldn't look at Tip Tucker and go, that's, Jake from Time to Kill. Like you wouldn't go, that's clearly the same person.
Yeah.
I think he's like a character actor that can sort of go into those roles without being sort of like Christian Bale douche about it. He just sort of naturally has that ability where, like, you're not going. I'm assuming later on, I suppose, with the rom-com and stuff and other ones, you go, I'm going to see a McConaughey film. Fine, but this time he does feel incredibly versatile. Where he's like, I'm going to go and do this insanely wacky character, and then I'm going to do this other thing, and then I'll see where things take me. So, I think it's sort of like a compliment to his range and his ability, really.
Which is interesting, I don't want to tread over ground, considering that, the looks and the body he was born into. I can't think of a better way to put it, but, incredibly handsome, incredibly fit. I know you have to work hard to be fit, but...
He's a looking man. He's a good-looking dude. He's a tall, blonde, handsome, chiseled dude. Like, yeah.
And there are a few of these examples, like these people who, like, kind of... Perhaps they break in, and this is maybe a bit unfair to say for McConaughey, but they kind of break in because of that, but then they are actors underneath it. They're proper actors. And the best example I think of recently is Margot Robbie. Do you know what I mean? Yes. She was clearly cast because she's a beautiful woman, but the range she has is ridiculous. Like, she's such a talented, phenomenal actress. And he's one of those. I agree. I think, good-looking guys, stick him in the rom-coms. All the women want to be with him. All the blokes want to be him. Yeah. But underneath that, he really can turn up and give you whatever you need.
Without being a douche.
Without being a douche, yeah, that's true. Well, unless the character's a douche, which they are.
Yeah, but I think he's not Christian Bale kind of sort, or he's going to turn up and like go, do you know who I am?
No, he appears to be another one of the nice guys. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that at no point in the next 2 years does anything come out.
Yeah. You can't guarantee anything anymore.
I don't seem to, no.
Cupboards open and sexually abused women and bodies and other things just fly out of them now. Just everyone.
I think he is too much of a southern gent, though. Fingers crossed. I'm not going to deify him. We've all learned that it's not the right thing to do for anybody. But
I've never heard anything bad about him. Like, he's one of those people that I've never heard like bad stories. Everyone seems to have a good thing to say about him.
Yeah, that's it, I think.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, you hear stories of, let's say Brad Pitt, which I think is probably a sort of, a similar thing where he acknowledges he got roles because of his good looks, sort of, he is a literal sex object in Thelma and Louise. That's the reason he's there. And so the reason he took things like Seven and other films was to be like, no, look, I'm not just a pretty face. Like, I can do these other films. Like, I'm going to do Meet Joe Black. I'm going to do an incredibly somber film about death. And fair play to him. Like, I think, he's had a bit of hit and miss with his career, but like, fair play that he wants to prove he's not just a pretty face. And I think, Margot Robbie just effortlessly does it. Like,
yeah. I mean, DiCaprio, another guy.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the young pretty boy, and the range he's got to do.
Yeah. I think he's another one at this period, isn't he? Sort of, 97 is Titanic.
Yeah.
Really sort of launches him onto the scene.
Yeah, this year's Romeo and Juliet, isn't it? It's 96, yeah.
So, there's these sort of era of these sort of mid-90s sort of pretty boys coming up. So, I mean, you were sort of saying in the last episode, like, why was it? He didn't just take off after A Time to Kill, because there were 10 a penny. Like, there were just lots and lots of, tall, attractive, blonde men sort of appearing in films and wandering around Hollywood. And
perhaps not appearing in larger than life as Tip Tucker. So he's trying to show his range, but perhaps that almost was detrimental to him in some ways, maybe, because people want to put these kind of actors into slots, don't they? And then build, as you said, star vehicles from them. They don't always necessarily want actors. They want people who are going to sell their movies.
Well, I think this is the thing as well. Like, having third billing, like, at this point, I mean, I don't know how well this film did. I can't imagine. I'd never heard of it.
Not 12.
Yeah.
Cost 30 and made 8.
Shocker. Colour me shocked. But there is this thing, like, even Bill Murray is not a draw in 96, like, he wasn't. The thing is, Bill Murray was never a draw, let's be clear. Like, you don't go, I'm going to see a Bill Murray movie. Like, we think of Scrooged or Groundhog Day to give the other two, grouchy person becomes better person. But both of those are like legit good films. One's A Christmas Carol. So it's a Christmas film that's always going to get sort of enjoyment, directed by Richard Donner. So it's a fantastic film. And the other one is the Harold Ramis sort of film, and it's a genuinely fantastic film. And it's not like a Bill Murray movie. It's more of just a family film. He's just in it, and he's just very good as that character. I don't think there's ever been a film where you go, oh, that's a Bill Murray movie. That's a Bill Murray vehicle. They did a few, like, I couldn't even tell you what they are. I'm going to look, but like, there's a one where he's the irritating guy and his therapist hates him.
No, so I'm drawing a blank.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, from the 90s, this period, like, he just, there's very little that he is sort of going, that's, there you go. What about Bob, which was 91?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Quick change of 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even like, I'm trying to think of things like he appeared in things. Kingpin, he was, in that as a sort of a joke. That's the same year as this. He appears in Space Jam as himself. Like, the man who knew too little as well. That is the same year as this.
Yeah.
The Man Who Knew Too Little, which again is awful. Like, he's not, he's not a star vehicle.
He's not box office, no.
No, but I think this is the thing. Like, people seem to think like we've had a spate of like successes from the SNL crowd. Like that second wave of SNL people, the Saturday Night Live people, like, you know, Will Ferrell and even like Chris Farley, and there were a few others that went on and became stars in their own right, you know, really went on to become incredibly successful. Like Eddie Murphy, obviously, is the first one. Used sort of SNL as a stepping stone to go and do thingy, like Chevy Chase to kind of a sort of a degree. But there's a load that kind of came in and tried it and just couldn't. And I just don't think, I think Bill Murray's too sardonic and too sort of, you know, too sort of weirdly, it's witty, but like not comedy. So he could never hit that kind of like that sort of star vehicle. Dan Aykroyd's the same. Like Dan Aykroyd, you know, came in, did Ghostbusters, was very successful, and then kind of had to keep partnering up with people to do films that you'd want to see. I liked your comment before about like the audience or like or the acting equivalent, the ensemble is kind of what's needed around Murray, isn't it? I mean, there's very few, and obviously Lost in Translation, but again, a very specific type of movie where he's being asked to play Bill Murray again. But even in that, like,
come on.
People talk about Murray, but it's like they talk about Bill Murray partnering off against Scarlett Johansson. Like, it's not like they're going, oh, it's a Murray vehicle. It's like, oh, he's really good playing off or the chemistry, performing with Scarlett Johansson. You go, that's what he needs. That's what he works well with. He needs that sounding board or that sort of like repartee for him to work. He's got a bleeding elephant. Like, it kind of just looks at him and goes, "Murr," and then moves on. It doesn't work in that you need someone who is able to hold the screen on their own and stuff. You need that, like, you know, again, like, you know, Jim Carrey or Tom Hanks or someone who can do that kind of thing. Yeah, he needed like a psychic here, didn't he? We needed like a Ki Kwan, or, you know, we needed Dr. Jones. We needed, you know, just because of elephants is making me think of those guys together in Temple of Doom. But if sort of somebody came with the elephant as like the keeper, or as, I don't know, somebody else from the circus, perhaps that maybe would have worked a bit better, wouldn't it? Because you're right. Like instead, what we get is these series of skits, to use that word again, with these kind of, to use the name of this film, larger than life kind of characters that he meets on the road. But they're so one and done. They pass by so quickly, don't they? That nobody really makes any kind of impact. No, exactly. I'm trying to think, like, off the top of my head, like the one part of this film that kind of starts to feel interesting beyond the silliness of like the chase at the beginning and he wrecks the small town and all those kinds of like slapsticky stuff. Is when this film kind of says, does this sort of a more serious thing, is when they get to it's in the rainstorm and they get to this New Mexico village and the church is sort of, you know, the rain and this mudslide stuff is affecting the church and the church is about to collapse. And Vera's big trick is to go on her hind legs and up onto her front legs. And he gets her to do it. You know, he's
not done it since his dad died, is what the line is earlier, isn't it? Yeah,
that's it. Look, she hasn't done it since his dad died, and he's, by this point, he's now wearing the coat, like the big clown coat. He's got this big stick that is like her, you know, kind of like a conductor, like she knows, sort of like, you know, he whistles and he learns the whistle, and she does the trick, and in doing the trick, she saves the church. And so this small village is now sort of like, they have this thing. It says, I think it says there's a miracle of one thing, and now they have the miracle of the elephant.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and they're going to they want to build a shrine to it and all this other stuff. And he's like, well, that's beautiful and wonderful, but no, we're off. We're going.
Yeah, because he's trying to get to LA to get money for her, isn't he? Yeah.
He's trying to sort of sell her and sort of to this other circus. But then it becomes this kind of thing of like traveling across. I think I clearly must have blinked for a bit, but all of a sudden he's dressed as a cavalryman.
So because all his clothes have been ruined, haven't they?
Yes.
He's just like, I need some clothes. So they take him to, I guess the other thing was, she wore a yellow ribbon? I think they kind of, maybe that was filmed in this town or something. I don't know, because they've got the full costume. That's John Wayne, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
This bit confused me as well, because you clearly see the poster and the costume.
Yeah.
And then when he comes in shot in the next scene, wearing the clothes on the elephant, it's the Magnificent Seven theme. Which is great. I love that song, and it's been in my head for a couple of days since, actually. But my brain was going, but that's
your Brunner.
That's not your Brunner. That's not the costume from Magnificent Seven.
No,
but that's
generic Western. That'll do.
Yeah, very, very odd choice.
But I like the fact that like he's then on the elephant. And he's walking out, and they've got this, these people sort of helping him. They're following him out.
They're leading him, aren't they? Yeah. Across
and
the
then
plains.
and then he meets this, Native American sort of tribe, and then there's this exchange and stuff. And then when he gets onto the train, and I look, these people have committed, and they'll help him stop this train. And then Murray and the elephant are able to get onto this train, and then as it's going, there's this. He goes past this, I don't know, like people are sat there and waiting to go to come and see the elephant and stuff, and they've all got like
the legend as it comes.
The legend,
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so this is about the fact that he has now actually motivated people through an act of goodness, and then through an act of this with this elephant, he has now motivated this legend. He's motivated people. Like it should constitute something good, and it kind of like you see him looking bewildered about it a little bit. And I was like, this is really interesting. Like this should be what the film is. Like, it starts off like he wrecks a town, and then gradually like they're leaving good things in their wake. Everywhere they go, they make things slightly better. Apart from Tip Tucker, who, they
screwed over,
but he should become like Tip Tucker should almost be like the Dick Dastardly of this thing. Like he completely misunderstands it and wants to bring them to justice as he sees it. But the point of this film should be he should be able to look back and go, and they should have like a little mini montage of him going like, oh shit, like we did all this good. Like we helped this family, we did this thing, we did whatever. And that sort of brought us together. And I sort of feel like, I don't know, it just feels like every time there are certain scenes where I'm going like, oh, that's what the film should be. Like, why is it not that? Why is it not that? Like, this isn't hard to do. And
that's why it's so difficult when we get to kind of the final scene at the airport, which again is all over the place in terms of tone. Because they want us to have this big sentimental moment at the end, but you want to have the kind of crazy comedy in the airport of him running through the airport, kind of Home Alone style, trying to get through the busy airport and through the security. Different times, right? Pre 9/11. Just come in with an elephant. It's fine. You get a nice Dirk Blocker cameo, actually, from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Hitchcock. I wondered perhaps if this was his origin story. Like I
thought the same. I was like, this is a Hitchcock sort of,
yeah. But none of it feels earned. You're right. Like now he's like made the choice. He's got to do the right thing for this elephant. He's rejected Linda Fiorentino's evil circus money because he sees that they use tasers, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Not willing to rescue any of the other animals there. No. Just fucks off in a truck with Vera.
That really, really bothered me, actually. Where I'm like, he sees this other elephant get zapped, and he's just like, oh, fuck this, and we're leaving. Yeah. And I'm like, I was like, this is one of those things. This should be the big climax.
Yeah.
Where like,
okay, him and Vera go around releasing them out the cages, chaos in the circus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not that film.
No, because we have to get to an overly raw, unearned, sentimental moment at the airport. Yeah. Because as you said, these elephants are going off to Sri Lanka, aren't they, to breed. So what he's done is, okay, Vera's getting freedom, but he sent her off to just be a breeder.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that plays either.
Yeah, it was, but even that gets kind of called out. And there's a moment when earlier in the film when he meets the Pat Hingle as the blockhead, and his wife, and he says, "Oh, one of the options is she could go to Sri Lanka," and they call it out and say, like, "Well, who's she going to talk to?" And there's this kind of thing of like, "Wow, she's an elephant, she'll be fine." I'm like, no, she's domesticated.
Right? Yeah.
She's been around people all her life. Like, you can't. That's not how this works. They don't just dump them out in the wild. She'll go to like a protected sanctuary where they can monitor and do it, and then they'll take her to things. This thing of just airdropping them into Sri Lanka just seems really weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And they want us to buy that. Is it Mo, I think? Jane Ann Garofalo's character. Mo and Bill Murray, Jax, are going to get together at the end. I think they want us to buy that they're going to become a couple. And I was just looking at those two on screen together thinking like, oh my God, like no chemistry, no chance. They're not. This is the first scene they've had together within a few phone calls where there's been no growth between them over the phone calls. It's just another in a poorly misjudged series of kind of.
But this is again where I'm going. Like the casting feels so wrong. Like you know, like you said, they meet, and I could imagine that this could.
Well, put Tom Hanks in again. You know, let's go to a Tom Hanks thing. Like, yeah. I
could easily imagine them going off and going like, you know, do you want to get a drink or should we go for dinner or something? And then something grown out of it. But like with Murray, I'm like, there's no way.
It's like a dad.
Yeah. It just feels so off the whole time. And we get his most corniest of corny final lines, don't we, as well? He says, they say an elephant never forgets. And what they don't tell you is you never forget an elephant. And it's delivered in this like earnest, this is a saying, this is going to catch on, this. Is it? Well, this is the kind of thing
can we bring to that? And like where's that ever going to be useful in real life?
This is the kind of thing though where you could have that line, but you then need another character to go, what are you saying?
Yeah, sure, okay, yeah.
Shut up! Like you almost need to be called out for that as a line.
Yeah,
it's awful as a final line, and the fact that it does have then that they were like Vera was happy, and then
almost like a text wrap up, don't we?
Yeah.
As if this has been like a story you're invested in, characters you need to know what happens to the next. You get like a text epilogue. Yeah, that's true.
And even Tip Tucker gets one. Tip Tucker escapes and is still prowling the back roads of America.
Yeah.
But his takedown is funny, and this is the only the best thing he gets. And again, I feel like you've seen the Police Academy films.
Sure. Oh, yeah, I don't have to all of them, but yes, more enough to know.
But you know Captain Harris.
Yeah.
The sort of okay. So the thing with Harris is like each of the jokes sort of retch him up a little bit more. It's kind of like like there'll be something else or just twist him a little bit more until like you get to the end and he's kind of like at the end of his tether, and he's kind of acting stupid because of how annoyed and pissed off he is. Because like Tip Tucker comes in at 12 and stays kind of around 12 throughout the whole film. Like it never kind of feels, again, this thing of being earned. There's a really interesting scene at the end. Like he's clearly paranoid and conspiratorial. And I like this thing of them using the sort of the sleeve mics to talk into. And then Murray starts doing it. Bill Murray's character starts doing it. And like Tip Tucker gets more and more paranoid. And he's looking around going like, who are you talking to? Like, what's going on? And I feel like if he'd have started kind of normal, and this whole thing had sort of like frustrated him and driven him a little mad throughout this. So at the end of the film, this is him going like, I can't let them get away. And him being sort of like, going in this nutty way and then being sort of taken out by airport police, and being carried away. Like I'd go like, oh, that's funny. Like he's been taken up to this. And now he's like been this crazed character and sort of like, of all the good they've done, there's still this nutter that's kind of out there. But it's funny that one little scene where he's surrounded and stuff. But because it's the same level he's always been, it never kind of feels any variance to what there has been.
He's obviously popular though, because IMDb is mostly made up of his quotes from the movie. Letterboxd is littered with references to Tip Tucker, so he hit some sort of level for people that watch this movie.
Ellie thought it was funny. Ellie, my daughter, she's 11. She thought it was funny. Like she thought there were certain bits that were funny, and I think the two things she liked in this was the elephant and Tip Tucker.
Right? Yeah, I get it. So maybe people who've watched this when they were younger, target age. Yeah. I can see this being one of those films that just sort of like for unknown reasons was on like constantly on repeat on like Saturday afternoons or something, or some channel that just had this on, and people are like, I saw this with adverts.
Yeah, that's it. Like I saw this film repeatedly as a kid for no reason, and it is just ingrained in my brain.
Yeah,
that's the only reason I can think of it. Like it's
I mean, obviously, you're going to give us your official kind of score, a ranking, as we get towards the end. But I mean, I'd say this is, of the 9 movies I think I've done so far, this is bottom third. And when you consider some of the movies I've watched, this is the 10th movie. So yeah. This is pretty bad. It's finding redeeming features. I think you've done a pretty decent job, to be fair, of finding some things that are defensible. When I was watching it, and since I've thought about it a bit more, it's diminished for me in terms of what I felt like I could try and compliment about it. I mean, the bloody company that supplied the elephant, Vera, that company is called Have Trunk Will Travel. That's a better joke than anything in the bloody movie. I mean, that's who supplied them the elephant, and yet they still couldn't get up to that level.
That's amazing. I mean, I need to. Who else is involved in doing this? So, there's two. I love that there's 2 story credits for this film. Penn Denchman. I just want to see what else he'd done. He's a producer. There you go. He's mostly a producer, which kind of tells me a lot. Gary Williams wrote a screenplay for nothing. This is the only thing he's really written. And then Roy Blount, who, as a writer, has written this and a film called Happily Ever After: Fairy Tales for Every Child, which was a TV thing. So it's not exactly loaded with, recommendable talent behind the camera. And Howard Franklin, as you say,
I think this is his last film, isn't it?
Well, as a director, this was his last film. He directed 3 films. Quick Change, which I get the feeling he kind of did a thing for Murray. I got The Public Eye, which starred Joe Pesci. And I have a feeling I've watched, but I might be wrong. I might have seen the full Howard Franklin oeuvre.
Yeah. You have now, you lucky guy.
I have. Yeah, that's it. I've seen it all. But generally, he seems to be a screenplay guy. So yeah, it's such an oddity. It really is an oddity.
Yeah. In existence in McConaughey's filmography, in terms of as being a starting point for some actors, it's not one I think anybody is probably championing on their CV particularly high. No.
I mean, the thing is, I would say, like, this is one of those, like you say, it's an out there performance. It's, like you say, it's relatable to Texas Chainsaw. It is what it is. But I do stand by the fact that it clearly shows McConaughey's not just his range, but his willingness to commit, and like, I'm going to do this. Yeah, and I do think that sort of is, he might get into the sort of let's say the rom-com rut, I think is often referred to. But when you get to like Reign of Fire, which I think is again like a guy where you go, oh shit, like that's McConaughey, like that's him committing to roles where you go, like, he's going to go, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm playing a dirty dragon slaying kind of dude, and you go, all right, and then you're going to partner that with like Sahara, where he's going to go, I'm going to do this. Who's doing that, by the way? Just because.
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. That's his Indiana Jones, isn't it? I love Sahara. I think it's great.
He's in film. Was Dirk Pitt.
I can tell you who's doing Sahara. It's the man I'm talking to right now.
It is me. Wicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think, like, you look at it and you go, everyone talks about this rut that he had, but actually,
yeah,
guy was doing all kinds of bits and pieces, and I just think, as you said, leads up to like Tropic Thunder and a few others roles, with even like Magic Mike, because you said he's a very good looking guy, he's in very good shape, but like, I don't know how old he is in 2012, but to be going like, I'm going to play a male stripper or a male, dancer at that age, and I'm going to do this, and you go like, dude's committed, like, if anything, and we'll get to, I'm also doing Dark Tower, so when he gets to play the Man in Black, he plays a villain, and I'm like, I will commend McConaughey for his commitment to when he gets those roles. Yeah. And he's like, I'm going to do this role. And so, Tip Tucker may not be Oscar winning exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe Razzie, but fair play to him for going for it and going, yeah, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go all out because, he's bringing 1,000 times more energy than Bill Murray does to anything in this film.
Wow, that's true. Yeah, and I think that's a nice place to sort of finish up here, but thinking about moving forwards through his filmography, because we are going to get those ones where he himself sort of confesses later on at kind of the darker days of his career. But I think we'll find that he is still turning up. He's still putting in the effort. Yeah. He's still fully committed. He's owning that character and that movie. I think I've seen most of those kind of rom-commy movies, if not all of them. And I can't think of him phoning in, as we said about Murray here. He's always present and he always wants to do his best work. Yeah.
Yeah. And that just, again, speaks to the kind of person he is. That even if he was like, I'm in a rut, but I'm still being paid to do a job, I'll do the best job I can, kind of sort of speaks to his commitment. So, when he does finally get to have those more weighty roles that come later on, it kind of, it's paid off and he can do those, Interstellar and
Dallas Buyers and True
Dallas
Detective.
Buyers. Oh, yeah. And I love True Detective. True Detective, I'm obviously not for it, but that's another one. Yeah. Like that, even within that series, episode to episode, like that range of playing Rusty in that.
Not a million miles away from Tip Tucker in some ways.
No, the later versions of Rusty are definitely kind of like, there's a tad of Tip going on here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But
I mean, what he's saying is he's making me, when I get to that stage and I've got like 6 absolute bangers in a row, I've really gone on that journey with him. So when he has his lows, maybe I'll have some too. But then when he gets to have this absolutely brilliant run that he gets, I'll have my place there too.
Yeah, and I think you'll feel good for him. I think you'll sort of, I think it's an interesting counter though. This career compared to like the Stath when you did, Statham and stuff, who I think again kind of just turned up in Lock, Stock, and then was kind of like the Snatch, and then just went from there. Was sort of like formed in the sort of the Stath fashion and solidified it with like the Transporter and so on from there. Is always the Stath, there's no other, Jason Statham is never going to be like Tip Tucker.
No,
like he's able to take the mick out of himself, as you see in sort of like Spy and a few others. But I don't think
he's not going to lose himself in a role.
No, but I don't think you're never going to say I enjoy the Statham films, and don't get me wrong, but there's never going to be Oscar buzz around Jason Statham.
No.
But the fact of the matter is, there is regular, I can see, Dallas Buyers Club and others where you're going no, I can see this guy, has got the talent and the commitment that he should be walking away with golden statues on or at least be talked about in that kind of breath. Yeah. On a semi-regular basis. Has he had an Oscar? Has he won an Oscar?
Yeah, for Dallas Buyers.
He did win for Dallas Buyers. Yeah. So, yeah, but there's others where you go you bring in your A game and...
Yeah, he must have got Emmys and certainly nods for True Detective as well. I find it hard to believe that show didn't come out without awards.
Yeah. So, it's I'm sort of trying to squeeze anything now out of the end of this elephant, to be perfectly honest. Generally, I'm just effusive of Matthew McConaughey, good actor. I think that's kind of where I've got to with it.
Yeah.
Bill Murray, not a good actor.
You came for Bill Murray, but you've left Team McConaughey.
Yeah, that's it. Bill Murray never forgets. But what they don't tell you is you never forget Matthew McConaughey.
I love it. All right, should we see what a couple of people on Letterboxd think of Matthew McConaughey and Larger Than Life? Then I'll get your perhaps really startling, surprising final word on the film. Okay, Cham Bliss says, this movie is so lazy and uninteresting, from the boring script to Bill Murray's could care less performance. It's almost completely forgettable. It just plods along from one lame scene to the next, and then something miraculous happens. Tip fucking Tucker. Matthew McConaughey deserved an Academy Award for his performance as Tip Tucker. He's so over the top in this movie, he's in outer space. It's like he thought his performance in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4 was too subdued, so he went even more over the top. And this is a movie for kids. He's not in the film enough to save it, but when he's on screen, he's amazing, and you can't take your eyes off him. 1 extra star for Matthew McConaughey. Oh, and I need to mention that it always makes me depressed to see a real elephant used in a film. So kind of interesting that it hit some of those points we were talking about as well. Steve Sandberg. The title Larger Than Life may be referring to the elephant at the centre of the film, but it could also be in reference to the performance of Matthew McConaughey, an intensely creepy trucker tip tucker. He babbles incoherently about the perils of processed sausage, decries butt buddies, and obtains a katana for some reason. I recommend this movie. I don't remember the katana, but I think it's actually a crowbar, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a tire iron to begin with. A tire iron,
that's it. Thank you. Yeah,
and then at the end of the film, he gets one of the electric elephant zappers and zaps Hitchcock.
That's right. Yeah. I thought the bit, it's just jumped into my head now reading that. The bit when they're first in the truck together and he's talking about trying to imagine how elephants copulate, how they have sex. That got me a couple of times. That actually made me laugh a few times when he was kind of imagining.
She's lying back with her legs in the air.
Yeah, like human positions in elephants. To be fair, that got me. But
I think I did chuckle at that as well, actually. Yeah.
Letterboxd is basically just filled with like, this film's boring and shit. Matthew McConaughey's great.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much it. I mean, I gave it to be fair, I gave it like 2.5 because I was
you were generous.
I was, because I was a bit like, there's moments that made me chuckle. I never kind of, it never kind of offended me. And McConaughey sort of elevates it into not being boring beyond a certain point.
Yeah. I think watching it with Ellie maybe probably helped. Seeing that actually,
I think
that's partly the target audience, and she was getting something from it.
Yeah, there was some chuckles with her, and she was sort of laughing at stuff. But yeah, no. In retrospect, I think I was generous. I think I was in a good mood at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah. What are the things? It's not going to be a shocker, is it? I mean, this is not
probably
classic.
Not. Yeah. So should we consider this a classic McConaughey movie? Should we consider it worth catching, or is it truly for completists only?
Yeah. No, this is for completists only. But the thing is, it's one of those where you go, is it worth catching? There's a part of me that goes like, do you know what? If you can go on YouTube and just find McConaughey's Tip Tucker, I would say that that's worth catching. If you have to sit and watch the whole film, by the way, you can't.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that. No one's going to force you to watch it on streaming. I had to get the DVD, which, if I could return it, I would.
Back on eBay.
Yeah. Let's see if I can sell that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have to watch the whole film, just for completists. If you can find Tip Tucker on YouTube, check it out. I think it's worth just seeing what else he was doing in 1996.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And that really puts into stark contrast. Those 3 movies all in a year. If you're going to consider a time scale, that's the kicking off point, and it comes in a well-made movie with a bunch of supporting actors who have gone to have big careers. Lone Star for all its kind of odd ending, as you said, like subdued drama and interesting performances and a lot to say. And then this, it's just, it really stands out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That means 10 in now, his hit rate is not good. So it's 6 completist only, 2 worth catching and 2 classics at this point in his career.
It does kind of, it really does show the work for many that goes into becoming a headlining actor. And I think you sort of that's like he didn't really become a headline actor for quite some time. He's always supporting or same role as sort of like double billing or whatever. And I think we've had sort of like there are superstar actors that we go, oh well, they just seem to turn up but we know like even you talk about Statham, but like even like Stallone was scrambling to before Rocky, and then between Rocky and like Rambo, like and he made Rhinestone with Dolly Parton. Like, we don't all make good choices. But these actors, there are lots of actors that sort of like you'll go like, I thought about Jim Carrey for this. I think was it 94 was like Jim Carrey's massive year with Ace Ventura and The Mask the same year.
Yeah.
And everyone goes like, oh, he just turned up. Like, you go, oh, he didn't. Like, he's in the 5th Dirty Harry film. Like, he's in a film called Earth Girls Are Easy with the young Jeff Goldblum. Like, he did some other films that are not great. Like, and he did bit parts. Like, he paid his dues. And so, I think people do sometimes look at like A Time to Kill and go like, oh, McConaughey just sort of blasted onto the scene, and you go like, oh no, he didn't. Like, he paid his dues. Like, he earned his, he earned his way up, and he's still got some to do. So, no, full respect to him at this point.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, what is going on in the world of 20th Century Geek, of Stories Out of Time and Space? This will be out early February.
Early Feb. So, things that are going on the world just of this year. So, on 20th Century Geek, we've just done with Julian, we've just done our G.I. Joe, a full G.I. Joe retrospective, which was similar to this. It's been up and down, ain't gonna lie. With Julian being the expert. We topped it out with us doing Babylon. We talked about Margot Robbie. We actually talked about Babylon and movie making in the 1920s. And I'm going to go on and do some of the things around the X-Files, I think, next. Stories Out of Time and Space. We've just finished up our last season, and now we're actually filling we're filling the gap for a bit with a lot of the old Patreon stuff. So all the exclusive stuff we did for Patreon many, many moons ago is now coming onto the main feed. So all the big films that we did as sort of bonuses over 2 years ago, we're sort of putting onto the main feed, and then we're going to be leading up to on the Patreon. So we are doing that. We're now doing RoboCop, a full RoboCop retrospective. Nice. And again, starts good, kind of tails off, but it will include cartoons, so can't complain. But also for Stories Out of Time and Space this year, we will be releasing a new book, the Stories Out of Time and Space Volume 1, 12 essays, actually more than that, 14 essays, from me and Julian talking about different science fiction films that we discussed on the show. So yeah, that's a big one coming out for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're a busy man. You've got fingers everywhere, fingers and lots of blueberry pies.
Yeah, in a good way. Just want to be clear.
Take off your tinfoil hats.
I'm not, nothing's going to come out, like, no accusations. This is all like, it's mainly writing and podcasting. That's about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks, mate.
No worries. Thank you for that.
All right. All that's left for me to say is to thank you to everyone that is listening and partaking in this journey with me through the reconnaissance. That was larger than life. Next up in a fortnight, I'm going to be joined by Geek champion Paul and the returning Rhea to discuss Eminem's performance as Palmer Joss and Robert Zemeckis' Out of This World Contact, for those that are watching along. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers! Cut.